Ladies and gentlemen, you're rocking with a GOAT.
Hey, we're going to just get started here today. We had a little technical difficulties getting things going, but we're going to get jumped right on into our program today. I want to thank everybody who came on this morning or this afternoon to help us out with this program. This is a recap of the last election here in Cuyahoga County and what took place here in our county as it relates to the last election. We have a few guests that are going to be on today to help us with that. I want to first, before we get started on talking about that, I want to introduce our DJ True. He is our producer of the podcast. He's having some technical difficulties this morning and trying to get his microphone working, but we're gonna try to work through it and everything else. But wanted to start the program off by first saying that I want to give a shout out to a few people who helped us in this last election and getting things going. I want to give a big shout out to Congresswoman Chantel Brown for all the work that she's done. She did over this last election and working hard to try to get these Democrats elected here, not just here, but nationally, traveling the country, doing her thing, as well as Secretary Marsha Fudge for all the work she did to help us in our efforts in trying to get Black men involved in the process this year, and all the work that we did with her. I want to give a shout out to her. And I also want to give a thanks to a few of the other people. We had the CWA who came on board to help us also in our efforts with the 1,000-man boots on the ground campaign that we put together. And we really want to give a shout out to them and thank them for all the work and everything else they did. I want to give one quick pause for 1 second. I got Mr. Seawright calling us, trying to get on board. Give me 1 quick second, people. We'll be right back. Um, I want to also give a shout out to him for all the work he did to help us pull all of that together. Without Blaine helping us pull that together, it was going to be really hard for us, but we did great with that. Congresswoman Amelia Sykes, she worked with us also. We traveled the state of Ohio doing barbershop talks and not beauty shop, but barbershop talks, talking to brothers in barbershops. We did it here in Cleveland. We did 3 shows here in Cleveland, and we did went out to Akron and did a big kickoff there in Akron for in honor of Congresswoman Amelia Sykes. We did a kickoff here in Cuyahoga County as well. We did a big boots on the ground picnic. We did 2 of those this year to try to get as many guys out to canvas. So I think we did a lot of efforts here in Cuyahoga County to try to get African American men engaged in the process. Our goal when we first started on this thing was to initially just get men involved in the process, because we felt that if it was going to come down to Joe Biden and President Joe Biden and Donald Trump in the election, that African American men would have to make a real decision on where they were going to fall in as it relates to business and other things as it relates to their interests. So we felt that it was a very strong need to get African American men in. Once it became Kamala Harris, we knew that African American men was going to be crucial, but most of us, by all means, always support the sisters that are in, and we support our sisters. So we knew we were going to get behind them, but we knew it was going to be a challenge because there were some things that the Democratic Party was just not addressing. And we knew that early on in this thing, and we wanted to be able to have some of those things in place or try to get in front of that and trying to make those things happen. We also going to talk a little bit about the Sherrod Brown race, because Sherrod Brown affected our community as well. We know that him being the biggest race coming in, and from a statewide perspective, we knew that it was going to be important for Sherrod to win in order for our Supreme Court candidates to do well as well. So I want to talk a little bit about that. So I got some special guests who's going to join us to get into some of these discussions with us today. I have Antoine Seawright, who's going to come on. He has been working with us here. A lot of you guys know who he is. He's been working with us from in Cleveland, and he's also very, very tight with Congresswoman Shontel Brown as her new friend and deed and friend in need and everything of that nature. And that's her new boo, she say. So that's Mr. Seawright. We're going to hear from him. He's going to talk a little bit about the national as well as local. I have here I go. I have Councilwoman Stephanie House Jones, who's going to be on as well to talk a little bit about what the women was doing on our program and what the women was doing over this election process, and as well as some insight about the city of Cleveland. And rounding out our panel is going to be none other than our party chairman, Dave Brock. And we're going to talk a little bit about Cuyahoga County and some of those things. But I want to introduce everybody. We'll get started. I want to take a few minutes to bring Mr. Antoine Seawright on. So everybody, Mr. Antoine Seawright, welcome to the program, sir.
Well, Ken, let me just start from a place of gratitude and say thank you to the work that you and your team done throughout this cycle to make certain that we were positioned to win. We know that politics can be a game of a 50-50 jump ball, and it's all about infrastructure, it's all about engagement, it's all about positioning. So let me thank you for the work that you did to bring untraditional, non-traditional people into the fold and get them interested in this business called politics, because we know even if you don't do politics, politics will end up doing you. And then on the note of gratitude, Ken, let me just say thank you to the people who invested their money, their time, their blood, their sweat, their tears, people who volunteered, wasn't paid a dime, sometimes paid no attention to make certain that we have the right to participate at that ballot box. The election did not go our way, but so many things could have went totally even more wrong if people did not volunteer their time, resources, and so forth. So I think we should start at that place. Let me just try to do my best to frame the election for you. Period, point blank, we lost. We lost. And I learned the book of Clyburn has always taught me every day after the election, the boss always calls and says, remember this, when you win, brag gently. When you lose, weep softly. I've been hearing that message for 20 plus years now, after every election. And that's how I first started to digest this election. And so in doing that, Ken, what I also learned throughout this process is that it's easier to be angry than it is informed. And if you look at our candidates up and down the ballot on the Democratic side, it wasn't necessarily a vote for the Republicans. This was an election that was a vote against the Democrats. Whether it was the top of the ticket, Joe Biden and or Kamala Harris, in Ohio's case, Sherrod Brown, whether it was a vote against that or whether it was a simply protest vote, not voting at all, in which I hope that we will talk about that part a little more, because in Cuyahoga County there was a large share of voters who did not vote at all. I call that a protest vote, and so there was a lot of easier to than informed. When it's all said and done, and we're still counting votes, unfortunately, there were three pivotal pieces to this election. One, it was microeconomics. I describe it on television as feelingomics, my personal economy, not the macroeconomics, not the fact that we created 16 million jobs, lowest unemployment on record, closed the racial wealth gap, not all those things. It's my personal economics, things I can feel right away. I don't think we did a good enough job of framing those conversations to people to tell them, yes, on paper, it may be perceived that your life was better 4 years ago, but we had a once in a century pandemic, and there were so many things that changed the dynamics of our everyday quality of life. We did not do that. And we did not talk enough, Ken, about our successes. You know, because you and I were together on a number of occasions. I spent so much time till it got to be redundant talking about the accomplishments of this administration. Because if you look at the exits, working class white rural voters had two things to say. One, they did not feel like Democrats were relatable to them. But two,
Mm-hmm.
they could not articulate our policies and how their lives were better off. When
Correct.
70% of the voters say that their life was better off 4 years ago, that's because we did not message properly and message to the right people. And so that was part of it. The other part was just change. The change works for us sometimes, Democrats, but in this case, it worked against us. And there are a million and one ways we can frame of why that happened, why it did happen. What I do know is that when you see a surge in Latino voters, men and women, when you see a surge in white women, when you see a surge in white men that we've probably never seen before in a modern day presidential election, and then when you see the lack of participation among young voters,
Mm.
that ought to tell you that this was a change election that we were not, in theory, prepared for. And then the third element, Ken, was immigration. Now, there's a historical argument to be made that the two Democratic top of the ticket presidents who leaned in on the immigration front, Bill Clinton and Barack Obama, in fact, they called Barack Obama the deporter in chief, had success in his reelection because he leaned hard on immigration. How we address that issue arguably played a role in the election. And then the fourth piece that we've been hearing a lot more about is the whole transgender issue. I know every single ad in Ohio, I feel like every time I turn the TV on or listen to a radio ad, it was Sherrod Brown supports taxpayers' dollars going towards transgender, or it was little boys playing girl sports. These are the things that in the exit polling that ultimately decided that this is how this election was going to play out. It doesn't mean that misogyny did not exist. It does not mean that racism did not exist. But people voted first with their wallet, two on the issue of change, and three on the issue of immigration. And then there were certain other things that come into the conversation. And so we lost.
So,
And
so why didn't you think they pushed back on any of that? Why didn't you? Why you think that the Sherrod Brown as well as some of these national the thing on the transgender and other things that was coming out? It was never no pushback, no fight. No one did anything to try to. What you was up in the think tank of this? Why wasn't there any pushback?
well, part of it is we pride ourselves in being a diverse party and an
Hmm.
inclusive party. And with that, we welcome diversity in all forms. That
Hmm.
means transgender, that means LGBTQ, that means short, that means tall, that means
Hmm.
wide, that
Hmm.
means slim. Every version of diversity you can think of, we welcome that. And
Hmm.
so I think that's how we frame that conversation, or even how we respond to that, I think is going to determine not whether that's used as a weapon of political mass destruction or distraction against us in the future. And I think that's going to be important. That's one of the lessons we have to learn and have some serious evaluation about when it comes to selection. How do we talk about these issues in such a way that it does not push away one side, but it also does not give these people a reason, give these Americans, these individuals, a reason to not feel included at our table because we pride ourselves on being a big tent party. Now, Sherrod Brown did respond to the ad. Was that enough? And was that the only reason he was defeated? No. But broadly speaking, did that play a role? According to the exit polling, yes. And according to some of the research we've seen, yes. And I think we cannot ignore that was part of the issue that gave people a reason to vote again against the Democratic brand.
Many people seem to feel as if the Democratic Party is not supporting or listening to its base voter, the black men, the black women of that party in order to be successful. How do you see the party moving in that direction, moving forward, and still be a party of everybody?
Well, let me be very clear. Usually after these elections, when it doesn't go our way, folks will either yell it's because black voters did not show up or black voters did not part. Let me be very clear. Black folks did our black jobs. When you
Hmm.
get 78% of black men
Hmm.
voting for the Democratic candidates, when
Hmm.
you get 92% of black women voting for the Democratic cause, we did not have an African American problem. Doesn't mean that we could not have done a better job of getting more votes. But
Hmm.
by and large, and I'm not speaking directly to Ohio, I'm saying largely speaking, black voters showed up. Do we have work to do? Absolutely. Can Democrats afford to take black voters for granted? No. but we did not have per se a CBC problem, as I heard someone say. We arguably had a CHC problem, Hispanic voters.
Mhm.
We also had a white working class voters. And let me also be clear about one thing. When you hear these narratives being framed about this election, black people are working class people too. But we
Mhm.
voted.
That's
Where
correct.
we did not see the numbers we needed was with white working class voters in rural America. And so we've got to take these lessons and learn from them. Two things happen in elections, Ken, and I say this all the time. You either win or you learn. You do not lose.
Mhm.
And so often when we win, we don't take the time to learn. And so we've seen slippage over time with some of these constituencies, but it all came to a head in this election because people had a real reason in their minds to vote against us. Now, from a Republican standpoint, let me tell you where their intentions were. They
Mhm.
want to increase the electorate by a 3% masculinity increase. They want to make this about men. So they went across the country on college campuses registering young white fraternities, men, and also being very intentional in targeting white men voters all across the country, Ohio and others, the 7 battleground states, and making it with a hope to increase the electorate by 3% when it comes to masculinity. They were
Mhm.
successful in many ways because if you see how people voted, they increased the share of white male voters. The other piece
Mhm.
they were successful doing is convincing white women in this country that they presented them a better opportunity from an economic bill of health, from a social bill of health, and every other bill of health you can imagine. And so you saw a surge in white women. And then with the immigration issue, what they were able to do was have this cultural conversation with a lean on macroeconomics and made Latino voters, men and women, young and not so young, feel like they presented a bigger case. It did not matter that we wanted a bipartisan piece of legislation on the border. None of that shit, none of that stuff mattered. What mattered is this was an emotional election that they were able to tap into anger, frustration, confusion, and fear, and use that as a driving, divisive tool to turn out certain targeted constituencies to get across the finish line. Now, let me just say this. Our candidates have a responsibility to take blame for not running the type of campaign that was required of them in this moment. I
Mhm.
cannot tell you, Ken, and I'm being transparent, the number of African Americans in Ohio that came to me privately and publicly and said, what about us? It doesn't mean that Chantel Brown for Congress did not do its job, but when you have a top of the ticket that's driving the conversation, that requires a top down and bottom up strategy. We
That's
did not
correct.
have it in such a way that people felt connected enough. It doesn't mean that Sherrod Brown did not run a campaign, good campaign. It just means people did not feel the campaign through and through. And
Mhm.
I think we have to do some very honest evaluating about that. Same thing in other parts of the country. I'm using that as an example because I know you're based in Ohio. I knew there was
Mhm.
a collective effort to engage on this race because it became one of the most expensive races in American history from a senatorial standpoint.
No, there was serious disconnect in Ohio with what was going on with that, and obviously it came from the top down because of the numbers show that. With the rise of support for Trump among young black, suggesting it suggests a real disconnect in the messaging for the Democrats. What specific policies and areas do you think the Democrats are failing to address that is going to attract these young black men back to the party?
Well, I push back on that, Kim, because I don't think that Trump had this big surge of young black men.
Hmm.
78% of black men voted for Kamala Harris, the second most loyal, second largest voting bloc in this election cycle next to black women. Trump got the same percentage he got 4 years ago when it comes to black men. That
Hmm.
says a lot because considering, as I said many times across the country, we had a 7% increase in eligible black participation. So with more black Americans able to participate, 30 some odd plus million voters, he got the same percentage. I think that says to us that we held our line. And so, do we have work to do with black men? Yes. But is the expectation for us to win 100% of black men or black women? No, because black men or black people are not monolith. We don't just go with the flow. I contend that we're more pro-value and anti-institution than any other constituents in the country. But also this notion that somehow or another Trump's policies connected to black men more than Kamala Harris, I think that's bullshit. And
Hmm.
I'll tell you why. Because
Hmm.
Trump didn't put forth a policy agenda.
That's
No,
right. Right.
no
Okay.
person can tell me
That's understandable.
Donald
Right.
Trump had a policy agenda for them, other
Hmm.
than the wealthy and the well-connected, because he declared he was going to give tax breaks. White women can't say that. Latino voters cannot say that. The only thing he said was, we're going to drill, baby, drill.
Hmm.
We're going to implement, reinsert the Trump tax credits, and we're
Hmm.
going to shut down the border. On the other side, Kamala Harris talked about building homes. She had put out a black men's agenda. She talked about extending the child tax credit. She talked about signing the bipartisan border and security legislation. She talked about taking medical debt off your credit report. She talked about capping the price of insulin for everybody. I mean, she put together a literally policy plan.
Hmm.
And that didn't matter because politics have become more emotional than they have more page. And I say page meaning a script manual about a policy agenda. And I think we have to be honest with ourselves and get into the business of feelingomics, get into the business of connecting with folks, meeting them where they are, and not just waiting 2-3 weeks before the election and say, let's insert Beyonce, let's insert whomever, whatever
Hmm.
star into the conversation and say that's going to drive the narrative. I'm not saying we got it all right. I don't want anybody to hear me and say we got it all right, or I'm not saying that there was anything magical other than we did not get it together. We did not have it together. We did not communicate properly. We did not meet folks where they are, and we have to continue learning the lessons from this election.
I had a question from Anthony Simmons from Facebook. He writes, "How Republicans are able to get away with the language, the transgender language, and having two high-ranking transgender elected."
Well, in the words of Kendrick Lamar, they're not like us. And our homework is not graded the same. Ken,
Uh-huh.
true.
Uh-huh.
And they can get away with calling Mexicans rapists and thugs. They can get away with saying we're gonna deport you. They can get away with saying that Puerto Rico is a Garvin Islands float. All the stuff that Trump said and did,
Hmm.
they can get away with being a convicted like none of that mattered.
Right.
And we spent a lot of time talking about and trying to analyze those things when everyday people just wanted to know that in the words of Bill Clinton, 1994, I think it was, in
Hmm.
Iowa, I feel your pain.
Right.
We did not show up with empathy enough. We did not meet folks where they are. I think strategically we could have responded in some places while we were introducing the vice
Hmm.
president. The other thing is I think people forget Donald Trump spent a career being on television, being a star, a
Hmm.
marketing genius. He spent another 10 years, Ken, running for political office.
Right.
Kamala Harris, although she was elected to all these roles, and I'm not making excuses, people were still getting to know her. What showing up at the ballot box is all about is a demonstration of trust. And
Hmm.
so if I don't know you, I can't trust you. You know what you're going to get from Donald Trump. Whether you agree or not, you know what you're going to get. And he's proven that with these appointees. People who would not get an interview for some of the jobs they've been already nominated for. People knew that. And they rather say, I'm willing to take a chance on that again versus taking a chance on someone where I'm not clear about where they stand on whatever issue it may be.
Hey, we're going to add now our other guest to the program. I'm going to bring in for us now. We're going to add to the discussion Councilwoman Stephanie House, and we're also adding now our county party chairman David Brock. We're going to continue the conversation a little bit more. Councilwoman, thanks for coming on the program. I gotta want to see if you want to respond to any of the things that Mr. Seawright had just said.
No, I don't really have too much to say from him. I will still say that America is being America. I think I hear what people are saying about messaging and strategy and things of that nature. When you are embarking on something that has never been done, America did America. We still have a system fundamentally that is based on a white supremacy model, right? We have a society that teaches us that women cannot aspire to higher, the top echelons of leadership, especially politically. And that's what and the fact that you had 107 days to do it, there were just a lot of things that were in front of us. I will say that that's a part. That's a part of it. That's the foundation of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then
Mm-hmm.
separately, just when you have collectively as Democrats, who the need to communicate it is sorely lacking, and it's not communicating only during the election year, like communicating in your service,
Mm-hmm.
right? When you ask like everyday residents, they have absolutely no idea what any of us do,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely no idea what we do. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying that, as a fully elected person.
Mm-hmm.
And if you say you're doing all these things, and I know many of us are logging many, many hours, 14-hour days, 15-hour days, you doing all this work. But if the people that you are serving don't know what you're doing, you're not doing anything. And
Mm-hmm.
that is one of the fundamental problems that I find for just here in Cleveland and in Cuyahoga County and in Ohio, is that those of us who are elected Democrats are not doing a good job to communicate how we are showing up each and every day for people, right? That is the fundamental problem.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, that's in addition to the foundation of America and in the system, but the
Mm-hmm.
communication is sorely lacking, which makes it much more easier for people to depress the vote. When people are just putting out all this negative energy, a lot of people just throw up their hands and say, "No one, they're all the same." Right? When you
Right.
hear this, they're all the same,
Mm-hmm.
baby. If we were communicating and we show up and we can communicate with people in the policies that we're doing, how we are actually serving people, I mean, again, the biggest things when people talk about the refundable child tax credit, like most people had no idea. Again, the reason those checks that families were getting to ensure that babies can eat over the summertime, most people had no, they don't know the connection. They don't know who did. They didn't know Senator Sherrod Brown, Representative Congresswoman Chantel Brown were delivering on those things, right? For
Right.
your everyday life,
Mm-hmm.
right? And until we are able to effectively communicate with our people, right?
Mm-hmm.
You always got to start at home. We got to communicate to our people how we are delivering from them, and then we can go and build and grow from there. But just even in this year, we didn't even communicate with our own people, and
Mm-hmm.
that's why you had less people really turning out to vote in some of the communities that we needed compared to even in the during the global pandemic.
We're gonna come back to that statement. I'm gonna give our chairman a chance to open up also, but I'm gonna come right back to that because the question I want to know is why did we fail to deliver in that? Chairman Brock, you have anything you want to add to what Mr. Seawright said?
Yeah, I thought he hit the nail on the head with all that he said. The microeconomics versus macroeconomics is 100% true. Democrats talked often about more people working than ever in American history, but it doesn't resonate when costs go up. And even if those costs are small at one time, they add up over time. And I think the notion of a protest vote, as Antoine said, makes perfect sense because it is a sense of agency that voters themselves are taking to make a conscious decision not to show up because of what the councilwoman is saying or what you're saying, Ken, that they're all the same. And they're not looking out for me. And I think that's 100% right in where we're going and what happened. So, yeah. But we're
So
all in this together. I mean, Democrats have to realize that above and beyond everything else, we are all in this together as Democrats, and that needs to be
Ken,
emphasized, I think.
Ken, one of the things that Chair, I hope that you do and Councilwoman and others is, so often the easiest thing to do is just say we lost and moved on. But I hope that we, with precision, take the county, divide it up, elected official, however you do it, precinct by precinct, and make the comparison to 2024, 2020, 2022, and the special election. Because there was something different. And it's not all, sometimes it's just the basics. And look, I know folks did as much as they could. I don't know if it was
No, they didn't. No, let me interject. No, they did not. And I think that's the thing
Not
is
and not
when
everybody, not everybody, not
no, they
everybody.
did not.
Some who did what
Mm-mm.
they could, right?
Mm-mm.
Not everybody. But I think we have to be honest and actually look at the numbers versus making emotional assumptions and
Mhm.
say, look, this is where the drop off happened. This is where we got to spend our time. Like if we don't, if there was no real plan on paper to look at previous elections and say, okay, this is where we have to overperform. This is where we have to underperform. This is where we may underperform. Here are new voters. Here are voters who may have voted in midterms, not presidentials, may not have voted since Barack Obama, may not have voted since Hillary Clinton. You know, all the magical things that you would do in having a campaign strategy. If we don't have that, then we lost from the start. And I don't know if that existed before the election. But what I can tell you is we now have an opportunity before 2025 and going into 2026.
I don't think it existed. And I have to be the one that says that. I think there was a plan for and I can't speak on the county for what the county did or the state did, but I believe that they always have a plan to do something. But for whatever reason, I agree with the councilwoman in the fact that I believe that there was I'm with the councilwoman. I don't think that there was a lack of something that was really missing in our on this election. I don't want to say it was leadership because we had leaders in positions asking people to do what they needed to do, trying to put stuff out there. There was an issue where, but then we had some leaders who wasn't pushing it out there, and wasn't allowing that to happen. And I think that was a serious problem for us. I think campaigns only work from the top down, like you say, and the bottom up. I think the bottom up wanted to work. I really do, but I think the top down was really shutting it down. And when the bottom up is a fragile piece of people, and if they don't feel that they're getting what they get, they're going to move away because they're fragile in the first place. And it didn't. It came down to like yard signs. You had to pay for yard signs for the election this round, which made people feel like there was no election and people didn't care. They're the I don't even think Kamala Harris mailed to Ohio this round, so we never got anything that asked us to vote for her or anyone along those lines. So I think that right there was an issue. And then coming from the Sherrod Brown side, I'll be the first to say he just didn't do a good job of reaching out to African Americans. He didn't do a good job of reaching out to our community and other communities in order to help us put together the energy that it takes in order to galvanize our community. We didn't do any real serious canvassing in our community, any paid canvassing that would have got into the community to drive people to vote. So I think all of that had it. In spite of all of that, the county did still have a 71% turnout. It was a little lower than previous years in 2024 and other years since then. But the county did have that. On the east side, with the lower turnout that we talked about, African Americans still voted at a higher percentage per precinct for Kamala Harris and the Democratic candidates than any other area in Cuyahoga County. So we can say that African Americans did do that. But on the statewide end, and I throw this question to you, David, is that we lost everything in the state. We lost all our Supreme Court races. And Sherrod Brown lost as well. What do you see, and what is the stuff that you're getting back from the people and the district now, because they can't be happy with what just took place? I mean, as they say, we got our ass kicked all across the board. This is just how it is. So how do you see us moving on, and what is the Democratic Party locally next steps you think that they want to do to sort of start to bend or fix some of this?
Yeah, I think some of it gets into the notion of national headwinds that impacted everything. Essentially, this country moved 6 points to the right or towards Trump. If you consider that Biden won the popular vote by 4.5 points and Trump will have won it by 1.5 this time. There was slight rightward movement in this county and more so in the state. But nonetheless, those are significant when you add them up. The party, and this touches a little bit upon what Councilwoman House Jones is saying, is we need to do a better job in this county, I think, of promoting Democratic, especially local Democratic successes. A lot of people don't know what council members do. No one seems to know what county council does in this county, but we need to talk. So when the Cleveland City Council passes medical debt relief, that's something that we need to do. And also Cleveland next year, for the first time in decades and decades, will see a population increase. The party has never, to my understanding, done large-scale voter registration. There's several great groups who do that in this county, but I think this county party can undertake this, especially because we will see Cleveland grow. But a lot of what everyone has already said is true. At the state level, Sherrod Brown was anticipating Trump winning by 8, and he won by 11. And that impacted, and I think the criticisms you've made, Ken, are fair and accurate.
Ken, if I can just say, look, at the end of the day, Cuyahoga, Summit, and I forget the other one, but those are 3 big must, not plus, counties in our in Ohio. And Dave, I don't know if you had a plan on paper or what, but if we did not have, in retrospect, if we did not have a serious engagement strategy with the most resources that a state party will have in any other time, having a senatorial race at the top of the ticket and a presidential year, if we did not have a serious plan to meet folks where they are to get them involved, you can cancel Christmas on 2026 because you will not have a presidential race driving energy and attention in the same way in 2020. It's all going to be down the ballot. I don't know if people are going to be serious about, coming out to vote, considering what they see now. And so I think we all have to do some serious evaluating about this election and what it actually means.
Candidates that are running need to run for, go get your votes. Like, that is every candidate's responsibility. It is not, I do not expect anybody to run my race for me. And I truly believe that there has to be real expectations for candidates who are on the ballot. If you ask candidates, what's your win number? Can they tell you? Do they know how many how many votes they need to get out of each precinct? You know what I'm saying? That's every candidate's responsibility. And there is a level of disconnect. I just know that we have the opportunity for candidates that are seeking to go through, our Democratic Party. That is a strategy. But there's also, like, just in community. I think I know communities are showing, especially when we know there is synergy, like a community in Black Minds, right? There were 1,600 people less that voted this time than in 2020, the last presidential election. And I know it is absolutely connected because candidates did not even court them. You can be assured you will not get a vote that you don't ask for. We had candidates that never asked. And I just, I just,
So what you're saying is you believe the candidates didn't work hard enough?
that's exactly what I'm saying. I can tell you, hands down, in my neighborhood, they didn't come here, share a little, share around a little, right? But virtually none of the other candidates, from judges, state, other.
I hope the congresswoman came to your neighborhood.
Again, I'm just being, but I know it's because when you are in one of the communities that has a low voter turnout, people just brush it off to the side, right?
That's correct.
And like, we don't need to go there. But I'm just saying, it's just like there was a little bit done, but were all the targets identified or people connecting to? No. And you can ask people, and I tell people, do the everyday people test. Ask the people who were on, who even voted in the special elections, were they courted? You know what I'm saying? And like I said, it was not like somebody may have done a precinct, right? But again, when you have 22 precincts and you only focus on one precinct, and again, that's one of the things of, even if you are a candidate, talk to the people that's in the community. It's like, hey, I can, this is what I need to get done for my community. Can you help me out? Right. I just did, a little bit with a little bit of resources. I had like about $7,000 that I fundraised myself to do, to do outreach, right? Which I did that. But again, when you don't have literature from candidates, you don't have like messaging points to tell, even to share with people, how will people deliver for them? It's really hard, or even for some like, and again, there's so many judges of even knowing how they're gonna serve for them, right? It would be nice in your own home community to be able to share that with people when they ask you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Can can if I can just because I don't want because look, I know what happens when we have elections like this. I've been doing this a while, and
Mm-hmm.
people get discouraged and they feel like their vote don't matter and their vote
Mm-hmm.
don't. Let me just be very declarative and say your vote does matter and it does count. And just because the election did not go our way doesn't mean that the vote did not count or that government will not work for you or that you should just give up. Because if you look around the country, look, there were 7 states with reproductive freedom on the ballot. We won those states. We flipped the Kentucky Supreme Court, kept the Supreme Court in Michigan and Montana, broke the supermajority in North Carolina, no excuse absentee voting in Connecticut, Proposition 8 in California was repealed, the minimum wage and sick leave increase in Missouri, Alaska, and Arkansas. I'm sorry. There were some wins, and even down the ballot, we won Senate race in Michigan, held on to a Senate seat in Nevada, Ruben Gallego in Arizona, held North Carolina outperformed the whole narrative. I mean, there were some big wins that we should celebrate. 3 congressional seats in New York, 3 new members to the CBC, one in Oregon, first time ever an African American, one in New Orleans, one in Alabama. There were a lot of things that did go right, although in totality we lost. I think we can learn from the places that went right and the things that did not go so right. And Councilwoman, look, I hear you. And I hope that you will say to the leaders that you feel like did not visit your community enough or did not give the proper attention to those folks and let them know, like, this happened or the vote did not shake out in my neighborhood because you did not do enough. And that's how we grow and that's how we learn. Because look,
right.
I think we have elections in 2025
I
included.
know. Well, I be on, a lot of us, that's when our municipal elections are. I think the reality is, in the upcoming elections, we know when people say, "Oh, there was not any money in Ohio," we can be guaranteed for certain there will not be a lot of money in these future election cycles.
Right.
I
Right.
will. I
Right.
think we need to be very clear on that, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so, even set very realistic expectations on what it looks like to engage when you don't have all of the money that you think. We have people power. How can you utilize people that do care, that are engaging, to then be your voice when you need it to be, right?
Well. To that point, Congresswoman. Now, there was money raised here in Ohio to help Kamala. I think women by themselves raised like $2 million that they gave to the Kamala Harris campaign. And so, if they're to your point of us being taking care of what we need to take care of here ourselves, especially knowing the fact that resources will probably be even more scarce coming into the future for us, that's something that I think we have to kind of keep in mind on how we kind of take care of our needs to make sure we're taking care of what we need to do, instead of raising the money and we gave it to the campaign. They had $1 billion, but we still had to pay for yard signs here. I want to make one quick correction. In 2024, we was at 63% countywide turnout. And in 2020, I believe our turnout was at 71%. So the
Our
county
turnout was 66% this year.
66% this
Yep.
year. and we was at 71. So we did take a little bit of a drop on there. And in that, David, how do you feel the local party is going to be able to get to the needs of the people, like what the councilwoman is saying? She's saying that a lot of the problem that they're having is in the fact that they believe that the Democratic Party locally, now we talk nationally, isn't feeling the woes of us, but right here locally, those people who didn't vote, who took the chance to say, I'm going to use my right to not vote, they did that for a reason also. And we also didn't win all our races. I was pushing hard for African American men, and the only Democrat who seemed to lost on the bench this round was the only African American man running for office.
Yeah.
So, what you say about all of that, Dave?
Well, Daryl Denny, I thought did a great thing. He stepped up, volunteered to run in that seat. He was outspent somewhere around 7-1 in this county against heck of a name. Other people refused to run in that seat. Daryl volunteered to do that. He worked hard. I think he finished 51-49, 52-48. So I thought that he ran a good campaign. But we did also increase. One of the things I hear as I go throughout that county is about Black representation on our common pleas bench. And so 2 new seats are being filled by Black women in this instance. And that increases the number of Black people on the court by 25%, because 42% of our county is not white, but only 12 or 15% of our bench is. So we've increased that. I think that Councilwoman House is right. It's hard. The county party is not necessarily a campaign manager, but the county party can indicate where to go. We got to 70,000 doors, along with 65,000 postcards. The vast majority of those were in Cleveland. We targeted Cleveland Ward 2, Cleveland Ward 9, which Ward 9, I believe, was the only ward in Cleveland that saw turnout go up and the vote for Harris exceed the vote for Joe Biden. And as you pointed out, Ken, the Democratic brand in a lot of those wards is still strong. That's where Sherrod got his highest percentages and where Kamala got her highest percentages. So, but the party needs to, again, reach people at their doors, reach people at their homes, reach people one-on-one in any way they can. And we did send 200,000 text messages, again, many of those in Cleveland, even before the campaign started in late summer. So we're trying to continue to do that.
Ken, if I can just jump in there, look, I think what we should all come to grips with is that more and more people want to be identified with a party label. So that means the party itself has work to do of meeting individuals where they are taking off their party labels. That's at the local level, Mr. Chair, the state level, Madam Liz, at the federal level, the same with our elected officials. I'm from South Carolina, where straight party ticket is a reality, and so we get clobbered every cycle. But you all don't have that liability because you can't vote straight party ticket in y'all state. And so you have to be intentional about going in there, picking out candidates. What this election should have said to all of us in places like Ohio, where that's true, is people are intentional either about not voting at all for folks or voting against them. I don't necessarily buy into the idea it was a vote for Bernie Moreno, whatever the guy's name is, or some of these other people. I think it was a vote against folks. And so we've got to be intentional about branding ourselves as the individuals who are delivering direct results for these people, taking the party labor off. And if our outreach and effort only happens in election years, we're pushing water up the hill from the start. And that's not always on yes, the party plays a big responsibility in that, but that's not all on the party. That's up to la-da-da and everybody. Yours truly, Ken, you, elected officials, whomever cares about the future of our community, that's on all of us. It shouldn't take an election year for us to be talking to Black men. We should be doing that all the time, Ken. And I'm going to make that on my end. Same thing for Black women. We can't leave out our Latino brothers and sisters. We can't leave out our young people, because young people had a piss poor performance by and large all across the country. I mean, we've got to do better. And look, in a place like Ohio, where Sherrod has been known around the world as the working class man or the union candidate, and if you see that support drop off for him across the state, that should be a wake-up call to everybody. Like, we've got a different kind of work. It's not enough to have the support of the top echelon of the union and think that's going to be it. Where the votes happened was downstream. So that means we've got to get with the local top echelon, top tier leadership of these labor unions and say, okay, guys, let's go in with precision and talk to your members because something did not go right.
So, David, on that note, and we're going to be rounding third on this, how do you see the Democrats getting back the working class? I know for a fact that, and we all know that from Ohio, Sherrod Brown is the working class man. He was on labor radio for years and years. People listen to him all the time. He is the working guy. So, from that standpoint, from everybody to turn their back on him, what is it that you believe in? Maybe you don't have the answer, but what is the Democrats going to do in order, or you feel is the stepping stone in trying to get back the working class man? And to that point, also keep reminding that, like we said, that working class men is more than just white men. That's everybody. So, what do you see? How do you see the Democrats working on that?
Yeah, no, that's a question. I think it gets back to messaging because prior to this, I was a college history professor and one of recent American history. And for 4 decades, Republicans beat us at messaging because their message was simple, easily digestible, and something that could be related. That was lower taxes, smaller government, stronger military. Of course, those aren't compatible. And this notion that God is somehow on the Republican side. And that was all false. But nonetheless, their messaging resonated. So I think that, and if I, as you pointed out, Ken, do I have the answers? No, otherwise we would have done that for sure. But I think that messaging needs to be tighter. It needs to be broader. The Republicans' message is the same in Nebraska as it is in New York City, and the same in Mexico, New Mexico, as it is in Maine. So I think that we need to build that message around things, notions of justice, equality, economic fairness. I mean, if you make less than $150,000 in America every year, the deck is stacked against you. But at the same time, we need to continue to stand up for equality and equality of opportunity, and meeting, as Antoine said, with some of the labor leaders and getting a better explanation for what went wrong, or hearing from workers themselves, including union members, I think is obviously a great start.
We're going to start bringing. I'm going to bring up Councilwoman Stephanie House, and I'm going to let you get ready to give your closing. If there's something you want to just leave on everybody's heart as we winding down, Dave will let you go on that, and Seawright will let you close us out. But Councilwoman, you can go ahead and let's hear what you got to say. And
Yeah, I would just say for those, first of all, thank you so much for extending an invitation for me to join you all this evening. A couple of things for those who care about the state of our community, our state, in our country. I would strongly encourage you to connect with other people and really begin to, there are new elected people that are going to be representing you in 2025. And I think people need to be very clear of what are we asking them to deliver for us on. Just because didn't vote for someone, that does not mean they are going to be there to represent you. So you need to ask for something. Secondarily, for those that are Democrats, I think we need to have a reflective meeting to talk about what is our strategy and where are we going, specifically looking at voter turnout in 2025 and 2026 and 2027 and in 2028, and what does that look like, what is the plan, and what is the work that is necessary for us to do every month, to let people know how we are delivering despite the odds and up against a lot of things when we know, oh, it's going to be a time coming 2025 and 2026, these next 4 years, and being clear with people of this is what people voted for or what they protested vote for. So hopefully it's everything that they wanted. You know, I hope it's everything that they wanted, and if not, we can have a different result. by
Be
partnership.
careful what you wish for, right? That's your message. Be careful what you
Mhm,
wish for. I
mhm.
agree. Hey, Councilwoman, I really appreciate you coming on the program. Thanks again. Would love for you to come on anytime as a commentator or just to listen or get in and give your thoughts on any of our panels in the future. And thanks again for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
No
And have a
problem.
blessed
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. David Brock, Chairman, what you got?
Yeah, thanks also, Ken, for having us and for staying in contact with me for the past many months. I do. One of the things that's difficult is it's heartbreaking that Cleveland's turnout went down, obviously, because in 2023 we saw an increase in Cleveland's turnout. We did go back and contact all of those people. I think it was the highest midterm turnout last year that Cleveland had seen in a decade and a half or something like that. So we anticipated good things. One of the things that we really haven't discussed is misinformation and how to combat that, and how when you hear it over and over, even if you're a Democrat, and there were many who said things to me like, I'm not going to vote by mail. Our vote by mail numbers were down below, obviously, 2020, the pandemic, but we anticipated higher numbers there. We were buoyed by the record turnout at the Board of Elections early vote, but people said over and over, I don't trust the mail. Even though it worked in 2020, and because we heard that for 4 years, and because the media sort of echoes this. And one of the mistakes I think that we've had, and someone questioned on here, I think it was Mike Nelson, should we be firmer? I think at times we should be. The media will tell you Trump lied, and then they'll tell you what Trump's lie was, and they'll continue to tell you that. But I think, as I said at the beginning, we all are in this together, and that if you don't vote, people pay attention. They pay attention. This is why so many of our policy outcomes benefit older, richer, better educated white people, quite frankly, because those are the people who, by and large, vote in larger numbers. And voting is really one of the best ways to build power and to build policy outcomes that we all want. So thanks again, Ken.
Oh, thank you again for coming on the program, man. We appreciate you coming on. I'll be reaching more and more opportunities for you to come on and be a panelist on our program as well.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you. Mr. Seawright, we're going to bring you up. I'm going to let you get an opportunity to close us. I'm going to bring this one question up that he thought Mike Nelson did bring this question up, and I'll let you close us out with that as well. And I got one more question for you as we go out. But Mike asked the question, Judge Nelson said he don't believe that we were aggressive enough. He don't think that when they go low, we should go high, that kind of thing. Politics work. What's your thoughts on that?
I agree. One of the things that you hear in the post-election analysis, emotionally and on paper, when you hear the researchers, they say that Democrats don't present strong. In some cases, that is categorized in different ways, but they don't. They say we don't show fight, we don't show grit, we don't show that we're fighting for the little man or whatever the case may be. So I think there's some effort to that. And when you see Trump cussing, and you see him calling people son of a bitch and doing all that, sometimes that's presented as strong, that's presented as fighting and all that. So I think not everybody's going to cuss on live TV or at a rally and do all some of the theatrical things, but there's a way to present strong, present fight, and punch back and punch up. I was quoted in Politico. A reporter asked me, what's the new model for Democrats? I said it should be clearly, when they go low, we go with the flow. And so when they go low, we shouldn't be trying to retreat and say we got to vote high. We should punch back, because voters are expecting that from us, because they want to see us fight for them and not be seen as K Street folks and not Main Street and my street folks. So I agree with the input from the caller, if you, or from the person who chimed in. And you say you had a question, Ken?
As it relates to it was something, you know, I was with a good friend of mine after the Hillary Clinton race, and Hillary lost, and she was leaving out, and she was pissed. She was pissed, and everybody know who I'm talking about, who knows. She was really pissed. And when she finally ended up talking to me weeks and weeks later, one of the comments she said, you know, white women voted the way their husbands told them to vote. Then I looked at this thing that went down this round, And I looked at those commercials that Kamala Harris was running, the ones where they were whispering in the voting booth, and all these other ones trying to do these signs to say, hey, you don't have to vote for what your husband tell you to vote, and this kind of thing. Then I was listening to Congresswoman Chantel Brown, and she was saying one day, we was having lunch or just talking one day, and she was talking about how aggressive that the Republicans are, and the Trump supporters. And when she say aggressive, she meant like they really into it. When they put a yard sign in their yard, the yard sign takes up the whole front porch. They put up banners. You know that this is a Trump supporter. And I say that to say that I believe, me personally, I believe there's some correlation rather. Let me get my language right. Some correlation, right, between the family, the white family, and them voting, and versus the minority. And I think that same thing is what the Latinos and everyone else kind of got into, that I think African Americans, I'm not saying we're not part of that. It's just something different about us in that. And I'm not quite sure how to kind of frame it, but they vote in a block and as a family, and that was it. The wife, the husband, the son, the daughter. Even if they didn't like it, they went ahead and went with it. You know, they did that one commercial where the guy said, well, she ain't gonna like it, and they said, well, but she's gonna do it. But they actually did that, and they may not have liked it. And I just don't know if it's, I don't want to say, because we know that most of the households in the African American community is held off by single African American women. I don't know if that's a correlation of making it happen that way, and I don't want to take that route, but it's something I think it has to do with family that we're missing, I think. And I just don't know what it is. So I want to just throw that at you, and I'm going to let you close us out with some your final thoughts on stuff from there, Mr. Seawright, and I'll do my last ending, and we'll be done with our show today.
Well, I think it's about unit, and I think it's about intentionality. The one thing Republicans, white, black, or brown, have been intentional about is they've been relentless in their pursuit to defeat us. And whether it's, when I say defeat us at the court level, Supreme Court, they now have the majority. Trump will likely get more appointments if things go as advertised before the election. Defeat us at the state level. This is the 20th anniversary of Newt Gingrich's contract with America from 1994. And in that, I'm a student of this business because I've been doing it for so long. They said at that time, Gingrich said at that time, you all focus on the presidency. That's going to swing back and forth. We're going to focus on state legislative seats because those are the people that redraw the lines and have the power to determine what the Congress would look like. But also, these are the people where if we push these fights to be state level fights and make it about states' rights, we'll control these narratives. And so they were successful. There was a 20-year pursuit of that, Ken. And now look at the majority of state legislators across the country. Look at the Congress, the way it's gerrymandered. Look at some of the fights we're having at state courts level and the federal courts level. They own that. So they've been relentless in their pursuit. They were able to roll back Roe v. Wade, deal with diversity, equity, inclusion at the federal level. All the things. They've been relentless in their pursuit. Whereas we do not treat voting as an ongoing activity. We treat it as a once and a every now and again opportunity. And I think that's the difference between them and us. The other thing is, going back to the unit, they understand the collective well-being of their community's overall bill of health. They understand, regardless of how I personally may feel, I've got to do what's in the best interest of my community's long-term best interest. So they have Mom versus Liberties coming up with Project 2025, which I believe is Gingrich 2.0 in terms of contract with America. What's happening now? 6 of Trump's nominations have direct contact or direct correlation to Project 2025. They were intentional about that. They didn't make voting about the history of the community and all that. It just said, look, you got to vote or else, with a sense of urgency. That matters. And so, no, we're not them, because I know that's going to be the feedback you get here. No, we're not them. But there are lessons to be learned from them. And going into the comment you made about, I would call it presentation, It is an aggressive presentation when you see yard signs on every corner that say Trump for America. It is presentation when you see them wearing these MAGA hats everywhere in the airport. It is presentation when they're walking around with flags, whether it's white supremacist flag or Confederate flag or the Trump flag. It's presentation. So it's almost like the paper tiger effect. We know it doesn't mean a damn thing, but it shows that they have collective community and they're not ashamed of that. We don't have that. These are lessons for us to learn in that regard. And so my little wrap up or button up is, let me end how I started by, from a place of gratitude. Thank you to the people who volunteered, our poll workers, people who knocked doors, made phone calls, sent text messages, put out signs, did whatever you had to do. Thank you to the venues that let us show up and so forth. Thank you. We have work to do. This is a moment for us to grow, not necessarily go. And that when I say go, mean go away and we got work to do. One of the things that we have to be intentional about and going forward, and Ken, this is a lesson for us as Black men, is we've got to go to where folks are instead of asking them to come to us. It's not enough to have a county party meeting or a Black men function and say, y'all come meet us here. That's what people get pissed off about. We need something from them. They don't need something from us. And so we've got to make some adjustments on our end to go to where these folks are. And I'm not talking about to the people who normally show up to our stuff. We've got to get non-traditional actors and players involved in the play. We've got to run plays that will allow them a chance to shoot the ball, allow them the chance to run the ball down the field. Whatever analogy you want to use, we've got to do that. And we've got to meet them where they are. That's not always on the news, and I'm speaking to myself because I'm a TV commentator for a living. So people ain't getting the news from MSNBC and CNN and all that anymore. We know that based on Trump winning. It's podcasts, it's digital, it's YouTube, it's all these different things. That's where voters are. And not all voters, because while some voters are on social media, some of them are on Social Security. But for the ones who are on social media, we've got to meet them where they are. For the ones who are on Social Security, we've got to meet them where they are. So it's not a either or, it's a, we got to do both. That's the second closing. Third closing is this. We have lost before, but we have won after the loss. We can win again. We can win in Ohio. We can win in Pennsylvania. We can win in Michigan. We can win in everywhere in South Carolina, North Carolina. We can win again. But we're not going to win again if we're not intentional in learning how we lost. And this is not like some blame game. I'm not interested in these people bojangling around out here. James Carville, the campaign staffers for Kamala on Pod Save America, and all these other people just bullshit. I'm not interested in that. What I want to know is the raw numbers, and we need to talk to the people who did not come my way. So to heck with sitting around, bojangling around with people who we know are either not going to vote or going to vote our way. So good to talk to the union leaders, but no, we need to talk downstream to the people in that union to find out why they voted against us. When Sherrod Brown helped save their pension, when Chantel Brown brought more jobs to this county than ever before. We need to get beyond the surface and get downstream. That's where our work has to be going forward, not just in Ohio, but across the country. And when it comes to Black men, we can't give up on our brothers. And we can't think that our sisters are always going to be there when we need them. We've got to stay focused on that. And we've got to be intentional about continuing to reach those folks, but expanding outside of our norm. And that's the simple way of putting it.
As always, you did a great job. We really appreciate it, man. Thanks again for me personally. I want to thank you for rolling with me all summer. Every time I called to ask you to do anything, you jumped right in there for me, got on everything for us. I want to thank everybody again for coming on our program today. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, Ken, if I can just say this because it's the holiday season. For people who are being with your families this weekend and for the days and weeks to come as we close out this year, take time to listen more than you talk. There are people all around us who have difference of opinion from us about some of the stuff. Take time to listen more than we talk. And then the second piece of that is the holidays are a tough time for a lot of people. And so don't be afraid to reach out for help. This election was emotionally draining for people, People are dealing with death. So many things that life just bring on the holiday season. 988 is a place to get help. Suicide prevention line, the therapist on the other end of the phone. Don't be afraid to take care of your mental health. And if you're having issues or troubles, don't be afraid to ask for help. Because this all can be draining. Life can be draining. But there are people who are willing to stand in the gap and help you get to where you need to be, and for all of us to continue to be strong. And so I wanted to say that as we enter into the holiday marathon.
I appreciate that words of wisdom. I'm going to take you up on trying to listen a little more this weekend and speak. That's a hard thing for me in my household, but I'm going to take you up on that anyway. Again, I want to thank all of you guys for being on our program. I also want to say, when I first started out, I had all kinds of people who said the same thing. Let's get on here and let's talk about this. Let's start pointing fingers. Why this didn't work, that didn't work. And the more and more I got into it, and I took my time on when I was going to do this program, because I didn't want to get into that role. So I listened and hear what everybody had to say and listen to all the national people. And I just wanted to have a conversation from our perspective of what we thought. I think there's plenty of blame to go around for what went wrong and who we want to blame it on. But I just wanted to see how we start to move forward and changing those things. So we're going to use this platform to continue to do that. We'll have more conversations with different people along those lines, and hopefully out of those conversations, we'll get something that will be able to help us in trying to move this party forward or move things forward, because sometimes it's just not about the party. It's just about getting things done right. So again, I want to thank you guys. Happy holiday to everybody for coming on to the program, and I will see you guys soon. Thanks again. Hey, stay on, everybody. I'm going to just log off. I want y'all to stay there 1 second. In the broadcast.